been in for many of my other classes with the pre-scan, post-scan, buying scanners and advanced technology that's in the cars and things like that. And it's a lot of overwhelming information. And you're trying to figure out, oh my gosh, I've got these added costs now, I've got to buy a scanner, I've got to learn how to do this. What does that mean? How am I going to adapt my business model to make this all work? First thing I would like to say is education is key. Because if you can educate your consumer, it's a lot easier to do what you need to do, which is going to be probably raise some prices or the fees to recoup your investment. Because that's what this is, scan tools and all that stuff. It's an investment in your business, no different than buying a hot box or something else that's going to help you get your job done, get it done right. Our number one priority being in the service industry, working on automotive vehicles, is safety for the customer. You want to make sure that when you're done doing what you do, the customer leaves, and if they put their kid in the back seat, that everybody's going to be safe, the car's going to work the way it's supposed to work. And if you can educate your end consumer that that's your goal, is to make sure that their vehicle's repaired to the best of their ability, the best of your ability as far as your dent repair, and that their car's going to be safe to drive once you're done. That's going to put you a step ahead of most other companies out there at this point. Not a lot of people. When I had a full room in here the last time, I asked them how many people do scans, pre-scans, post-scans. Not one person raised their hand. I know a handful of people in the industry that kind of helped me learn, and I'm still learning a lot of this. There's a handful that do it. The ones that are doing it have figured out how to make it work for them. You've got different aspects to this industry. You've got hail technicians that are basically running around with subcontractors. I don't set up my own deals. I go to work for XYZ company, and if they don't require me to do the scans, what should I do? I would recommend, as a technician that's doing vehicles, to get a scan tool and do your own scans. For a hail side of things, if you're doing insurance claims, most insurance companies are getting very familiar with the phrase pre-scan, post-scan. Most of them, if you're educating them that, look, the Oem Position Statement says that I need to do this to do a proper repair, and I need to get paid for that, they're going to understand that, and you're going to be able to negotiate a price for that. Companies like Aztec, if you're doing that type of scanning because you're in a body shop and you're just getting hail cars in, you've got that system set up, Aztec's going to bill you. You put a markup on it just like you would for the windshield guy or just like they would for the PDR guy. You know, there's markup there, so that's one way to do it. If you're doing a route, you know, you're out there, you're running around to the dealerships, you're going, oh man, they're already beating me up on the price, what am I going to do? You know, I would start with getting a scan tool that you're buying the tool and a software upgrade. Find something that's in your price budget that's going to do what you want it to do. Again, I recommend whatever it is. It's not some cheap internet that you got on Facebook because you saw a thing pop up. Do a little research, find the company that you like, get something that you can email or print out your things. At that point, you're investing. So it's not going to cost you any more. If you go to the dealership and the dealership's pushing hard back against you when you start talking about scanning, then just figure that as a cost of business for your own peace of mind, for your liability, because you're ultimately, when we work on a vehicle, we're the ones that are liable. We're the repair professional, not the used car manager, and you know, we have to take some responsibility for what we're doing. So for the used car department, I've been toying with, and I have one dealership that's okay with it. They didn't even really notice it because I didn't bring it to their attention that that's what I'm doing. Marked it up $10 a car. You know, if I'm doing a good volume there, that $10 per car is going to add up at the end of the month and at the end of the year, and I'm going to pay for my tool through that. I have a Mercedes dealership. I'm still figuring out how I want to approach this, but for the Mercedes dealership, you've got a used car manager who's pretty fixed on his price. I'm going to explain, I explain to them, it's either me that's going to scan the car or your service department. The service department's going to charge a hell of a lot more. So if I got to put an extra $10 on the car, you're going to be okay with that. You may get some pushback. It depends on your relationship with the manager, but you need them to understand, if you do a repair on this car that nobody owns except for the dealership, and they decide to sell it, and there's issues with it, it's no different than if it went through their quality control line or whatever, or their QC checks, and they didn't do something. It's going to come back to them. So one of the things that I was thinking of today that might work for them is to say, listen, it's got to go through your QC line anyway. I want the car before it goes through there. That way it's not getting done twice. Because their service department's going to be checking that car and checking the scans and codes and stuff like that. And that'll kind of help shift the liability. That's my plan. And we'll see how it works out. Retail customers, I've had a retail customer, you know, that I'm just starting to the only time I'm really going to need to scan a car is when I know I'm taking things apart. That's my main concern. So if I'm going to take something apart on this car, I want to make sure that it all goes back and everything's clear. So you got to kind of get familiar with the vehicles that are out there, the technology that's in them. If you have a Honda that has lane monitoring detection or the advanced braking system, stuff like that, you definitely need to figure out a way to do it. The problem's going to be the lag time. If it's a newer car, your scan tool may not do those scans. At that point, and I'm not giving any legal advice here, but you might want to inform your customer that, look, these are my options to fix that dent. I have to take the tail light out. There may be codes. My scanner's not reading the codes. You may want to stop in your service department and have them check it after we're done. That's an option. It's new to all of us, but for those that do something rather than nothing, you're going to be ahead of the rest of the group. It's a tool. When I explain to my retail customer that, listen, I'm going to have to do, you know, the dent, it's in a bad location, it was on a quarter panel, the other guy's going to probably tell you I can drill a hole here and fix the dent. I'm not going to drill any holes in your car. There's too many safety issues for me to do that. I'm going to take your tail light out, but it may throw off some codes. So I need to charge a little more to make sure and he was more than happy with it because he realized that I was protecting his interest. I didn't whack him over the head with it. The scan didn't cost more than the dent repair, but a couple bucks here and a couple bucks there, it's going to pay for that tool. So for a route guy or a retail customer, you may not be making a lot of money every time you take that tool out, but it's a tool that you need to have, and it's a tool you need to learn how to use. It's early, we're all going to play with it. The wholesale scale industry, not something I have a lot of experience with. I hear stories, you know, like I saw this horrible picture last week of a car up there with 10 holes drilled in the rails. And it turned into a very long thread on Facebook because some people go, oh, they got what they paid for. Well, that doesn't fly. The lawsuit with Johnny Collision Center, it was pretty much stipulated real quick that because you didn't get paid for it doesn't mean you can do a shitty repair. Just plain and simple, you're still liable for what you did. So throughout talking, then I start getting little text on the side and trying to explain to me that side of the industry that, you know, some of these hail companies, they're bringing in guys from out of the country and they're working for pennies on the dollar and they're doing this work because the used car manager wants to take the money and put it in his pocket, or the GM or the owner dealership. It all starts with education. Educate that dealership that, hey, look, I know you're trying to get the cars done as cheap as you can. This is my bid on the cars, but the cars are going to be done right. You're not going to have a liability issue. If you understand that liability on a vehicle that you repair travels the life of that vehicle. You're talking 15 years average lifespan for a vehicle. So that car with the 10 drill holes got sold to an old lady as a new car, ended up in a PDR shop who said, I want nothing to do with it. The dealership ended up, you know, having to buy the car back. But that was the one car that they got caught on. I'm guessing anywhere between 60 to 100 cars got done that way at the dealership because they didn't do it just one time. And the PDR work was horrible, by the way. But those cars are out there and they're driving around. They could drive around for a year, 5 years, 10 years. All it takes is for one of those cars to end up in an accident and something doesn't work the way it's supposed to. Somebody gets hurt or somebody gets killed. And with the lawsuit from John Eagle last year, The word's out there pretty much now. There's big money in lawsuits like that. The lawyer for that has actually gone out and done some crash tests of his own, where he took 3 different Honda Fits, and one of them was just a 2010 Honda Fit, and another one was a 2009, which is basically the same thing. And they did the repair the same way that collision center did theirs, and then they did another one that was repaired with aftermarket parts. And they ran crash tests on all 3 vehicles. Well, the one that was done with the aftermarket parts and the one that was done with the improper repair both failed. And they have slow motion pictures, and it shows you how that on the one airbag timing was off, and the customer, instead of hitting the bag and getting thrown back like this, was thrown off to the side, and all kinds of injuries occurred that way. So with this type of information that's out there, there's plenty of legal people watching this and going, I smell blood, you know? I don't want to be a part. I don't want to be that guy that's the face of a bad repair that's gone in front of a judge and a jury. So this is why I'm talking about the things I'm talking about this weekend. I want everybody to educate themselves a little bit and ask questions when you need to ask questions if you don't know. And there's a lot I don't know about this, but I'm here to ask the questions, and I'm here to put the questions out. I've reached out to 2 classes, and I'll say it to this one as well. I'm running PDR Nation as the chair of the board now. We're focusing heavily on education. It's like a puzzle. I'm getting little pieces in here and there. If somebody knows a little bit about this particular car that knows something about that, reach out to us, give us the information, help us put the puzzle together. I had a gentleman who came over from that had worked with Toyota and Lexus for several years, had a lot of contacts in there. He's going to help give us some information. Somebody posted a picture up on Facebook 2 or 3 days ago of a Tesla Model X. The rear door had a sensor in it. In the middle of the door, looked like a little fidget spinner with a round piece of aluminum foil tape on that. And apparently, right underneath of it was a position statement from Tesla that says, you are not to repair any dents in that area. If your tool touches that aluminum foil thing or whatever and scratches it, the whole thing has to be replaced. So these little bits of information, I would have never known that if that guy didn't post that up on Facebook, if somebody didn't share that with me. And so if any of you out there at any time run across a certain situation or something, please share it. Share it with somebody that can share it with us. I think PDRT is a great organization, PDR Nation. We're looking to help get you guys going in the right direction. So out here, any of you guys that have any experience with the scanning or have questions on what you want to do for adjusting your business model. Bryce, I see you hiding in the corner back there, and I appreciate you showing up because I know that you're concerned about these types of issues and you want to learn like the rest of us. Do you think that you're going to be able to adjust your business model to accommodate? Are you planning on getting a scanner and learning more about that or trying that? Or?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Open my eye.
Okay. You think you do a lot of retail work. Do you do any wholesale?
Slightly.
Slightly? Do you think you're gonna treat a wholesale car differently now than you would have last week? Because I know that when I drilled cars, 90% of the time, it was at the dealership lot where I had to fix that this is all I'm getting paid for this car. So, and on to the next one. I stopped drilling 3 months ago, cold turkey. I feel like it's a 12-step program, but I found through my experience my background is I'm a local guy. I live up in Atlantic City, New Jersey area. Started out mainly with the dealership cars, but I always built my business since 2000 on the premise that I wanted to do retail work. Because I thought I got in on the ground floor or something in 2000 and found out real quick that guys had been around for a long time before me. I'm going, well, how come I never heard of it? So I figured retail customer is unexpanded territory. And there's still a lot of people who never heard of it. So that's how I built my business model. So now I do a couple dealerships, not many. I do a lot of body shops that I use, and I do my retail. I finally got a brick and mortar location. So I run the gauntlet. I've been lucky enough to have hail 3 times in the last 6 years in my area. So I got a little bit of experience in all parts of it. And I realized real quick that when I go to the body shop, I never even think about drilling. I've always managed to find a way to get the dent fixed there. And it's because everything gets taken apart. So what we may need to do is educate ourselves a little more on R&I. You know, that we were talking in the last group about about how Facebook helps. Not everybody's into Facebook and stuff, but if you're into Facebook and you get into the groups, they have an R&I group that'll help you out. I've had guys help me on that Facebook group faster than the body shop tech could get onto all that and pull up the schematics. All that is another resource for you. It's another expense, but it's a resource. I think it costs around $200 a month for all that, and you can go in there and pull up the schematics and figure out how to take that door panel apart or whatever you have to do. But I found that if you get the thing apart, there's all kinds of access. You know, sometimes I know for guys like Bryce, who his quality is up here compared to the rest of us, a lot of the times you may want that second hole so you can cross-check and stuff like that. And you have to ask yourself, is that because I'm looking at the quality, or you have to think like the customer sometimes going, am I fixing something the customer can't even see? Is it worth drilling that hole? You know, if I can get it to 90% and sell it at 90%, if that makes you feel better for your business. But I can't see justifying it to myself anymore. We had, I don't know if you were in the class, we had two classes ago, there was a gentleman who had experience with Mercedes-Benz through the dealership and certified. And he was mentioning how sensitive the airbag timing is on the door. He said that they've got position statements in Mercedes that you can't even wallow out a factory hole because it'll change the airbag timing, let alone put a hole of your own in. And that's things we need to think about. But I don't want to get too far off track with that. I want to get back to the business model side of things. Does anybody have any questions about what they want to do or need to know for when you get home? Are you going to look into scanning? Do you need any information on any of that? I want to help as many people as I can.
It seems to me that whether we're getting paid for it or not, obviously would rather get paid, but whether you get paid for it or not, it's like cover your own tail. Situation that you need to be, that sounds to me like we need to be doing it.
Liability is there. That's not even a question anymore. We know it's there. The John Eagle case became headlines because it went in front of a jury, and the newspapers got a hold of it, and Facebook got a hold of it, and it became a big thing in the collision industry. Their magazines got a hold of it. For that one case, that's the one that everybody knows, but there's many other cases out there that get settled out of court. I had a panel discussion that I at SEMA with Todd Tracy, who's the lawyer that fought that case. And there was another gentleman up on the stand. His name was Aaron Clark. He was an ex-body shop owner. And his story opened my eyes as to the liability of not knowing something. Just because you don't know it doesn't mean you're not liable. His story was he had a body shop, car came in, very light front end damage. Somebody had backed up and hit the front of his car. He had to replace the hood, a little front cowl, and some trim to the bumper. So he did his repair, and in the process of doing the repair, the airbag sensor had to get taken off of the front support beam and put back on. Car leaves. It ended up getting into an accident down the road at some point. And the airbags didn't deploy. 2 people were maimed horribly, dog died, and he got sued. And he couldn't figure out, what he did wrong. Well, the OE position statement had said, anytime that vehicle was in a front-end collision and the airbag didn't deploy, he had 19 hours worth of labor and troubleshooting he was supposed to do. He basically had to take the dashboard out of that car, retrace the wire all the way back from that sensor that he moved out of the way and put back on, and he didn't do it. Did he think he did it on purpose? Did he do it? No. 19 hours of labor, he would have taken it. He just didn't know he needed to do it. So he got sued for that. And his insurance company decided to settle the case. They didn't go to court, they didn't go in front of a jury, so nobody knows about it. But he said after that case, 2 things happened. 1, he became the worst person to work for because nothing's ever done good enough. And 2, he said he had 2 years of depositions where he felt so bad for the employees that worked on that car and himself because they were being grilled and they were asking themselves constantly, day and night, did I do something wrong that put those people in harm's way and that they're in the position they're in now? So not knowing it doesn't make you any less liable than knowing it and not doing it. So we want to educate our industry. That's where I'm at. I don't want somebody to tell you it's okay to do something because that's the way we've done it for so long. But if they're not an expert in that field or they don't have the right information, I don't want them steering you wrong. I want people to ask questions, and if we don't have the answers, I want to figure out where to go look for the answers. I've reached out and tried to talk with some OEs, and from what I'm gathering from, they really, paintless dent repair, they know us, they know what we do. Some of them will say they respect us, but none of them are really working with us. And one of the reasons I found out, as I was talking to other people in the industry at the meeting, was that paintless dent repair needs to get standards. They need to set themselves some standards. Without standards, we're a laughingstock. We're just a bunch of guys running around doing our thing. And, I've seen multiple, ICAR was there at the thing, and I talked with some ICAR reps. Oh, paintless dent repair. They've been approached by so many different dent repair companies, dent repair guys, and nothing's really ever come down that road. It doesn't formulate into anything. So we need to take it upon ourselves as an industry to start setting our own standards, because when you're dealing with an entity like ICAR, in my opinion, you've got insurance people involved with that as well. You've got hail companies involved with that. Hail company, don't get me wrong, everybody's got to go out and make their money, but I found that the hail companies, when they're representing our industry, tend to be looking for a competitive advantage more than making sure we're all doing things the right way. So that was my point, and trying to take PDR Nation to an education level is that there's no agenda other than I just want you guys to learn, and all of us to learn together and help each other out and try and get some standards in our industry, maybe get a little respect, because I'd really like to be able to work more with the OEs and get some direct communication lines with them, but it's not going to happen if we're not working together and trying to do things together. But anybody else, questions, anything?
Yeah, I'm a dealer expediter, and
Okay.
my business does sunroofs and leathers and TVs and things like that for the dealers. And my husband was on the pro committee for a while, and SEMA tried to get the pro restylers to come together as a unified group. And because the pro restylers didn't think that it was something that education and things like that were necessary, it never came about. And so, until something comes along where we think that there's a value there,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
Well-
And a lot of times, this is what happens, and you can have as much insurance as you want.
Yeah.
You could have protocols where every car that you go to, you guys might have to go over to a dealership and you might have to turn around and pull whatever the specs are, or however you get that information to protect yourself.
Yeah.
It all of it comes down to time and money.
Mm-hmm.
So are you going to increase your rates to be able to cover for this time, and how do you justify it?
That's the key thing, and that's what I'm sure about here is, obviously most of you understand there's going to be a cost to go out and get scanners and stuff like that, and we all want to recover our costs, just like buying other tools. There is a cost of doing business, and sometimes you may be able to recover your money, sometimes you may be able to make money, and sometimes you may even lose a little money, but in the long run, that little loss, it's something that may protect you down the line. I don't know about most of you here that carry any kind of general liability insurance. I do, and I imagine most do. It's typically in the $1 million to $2 million range. That lawsuit is a $43 million lawsuit, which turned into 32% or $32 million of it was responsible to that body shop, who subsequently, after the lawsuit, has sold the body shop. They had two of them. One of them was sold and one of them was for sale, the last I had heard. So he's getting out of the industry. I don't want to scare people out of the industry by any means. Cars are still getting fixed out there every day. I just want everybody to cover your ass the best you can. Doing something's better than doing nothing, and that's where I'm at with that. Recovering the cost, again, it's going to depend on your individual business model, what you're doing now. You have to figure out a way to either try and get it back a little bit here, a little bit there. I think that's probably for most of the route technicians or retail technicians, that's the way to go. You don't want to scare off your customers, your clientele by telling them, you know, I got to charge you as much for the scan as I do for the dent repair. If you're in the hail industry and you're doing insurance claims, it's going to be a much smoother transition because they're already doing that in a lot of body shops at this point. So you have to start somewhere. That's kind of where I'm at with that.
Working for auctions years ago, they had auction manufacturers reps had no-hold policies. Lots of insurance companies, when you're fixing hail, have no-hold policies. But when you're doing retail work for a retail customer, I can't think of how many times, you know, I thought, you know what, just a little hole in this wheel well, quick access, and seal up some silicone, it'll get dirty, nobody will ever notice, it'll be fine. With things that are happening now, the equipment and technology in the cars, if it's the customer's car, it's just not even worry about whether it's got a lien or not. But if the customer owns a car, can they give you
A
permission?
liability waiver?
Yeah.
No, and I'll tell you why. The John Eagle collision case was a car that had hail damage, was repaired in the body shop, given back to the customer, and the customer took it and drove away. A couple years later, they said, time for a new car, traded in. Traded it in, somebody else bought the car. This person's driving the car and gets into this accident, and that's how the whole thing came. So what they determined in that lawsuit was safety, first of all, does not degrade. It's not a drivetrain, an engine, transmission. There's no wear down. Safety is designed into the vehicle and needs to travel the life of that vehicle. Okay, so if you alter that safety at any time, you're going to be liable for it. And it transfers from owner to owner. The average lifespan is 15 years. Most people keep their car 5 to 10, trade it off, somebody else buys it. So that's one. Another point that was brought up to me earlier in one of the other classes was, and this is not legal advice, but basically if you go to the customer and say, all right, I'm going to give you a waiver, you sign it, he signs it, you sign it, you've made an agreement with that person that it was okay to compromise the safety of the vehicle, which won't hold up in court anyway. But you didn't make that same agreement with his wife or his kids in the back seat, so, and the next owner of the car. But one of the things they did that I've heard, and Todd Tracy spoke about, you cannot waive liability for safety. I heard a brief discussion up there where they were talking about, customer brings his car into me at the body shop and he's got aftermarket parts that he bought and he wants me to put them on and paint the car. Am I liable if those parts don't perform? And they said yes, because the customer is giving it to you with the expectation that whatever you do isn't going to jeopardize the safety of the vehicle. The safety of the vehicle is paramount, and it travels the life of that car. So anybody that alters it or does it. The irony of the entire discussion was that this was all taught to me and learned at SEMA, where every car, when I walked outside, was jacked up to here and had aftermarket stuff. They had a whole freaking convention center full of aftermarket parts. I don't want to scare everybody into oblivion. Things are happening out there. I want you to use some common sense. I want you to think twice before you do something. If you think that this is the easiest way to do it is to drill a hole, I'm not going to police you. I'm not going to turn you into anybody, but I want you to think about it. Use some common sense. Are you putting yourself at risk? I'm not going to get sued at the end. You know, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the poster child for it either, because like you said, when you try and tell people you need to come together and figure this out, sometimes it's a wake-up call. Right now, the body shop industry is in that wake-up call. That lawyer did crash tests, the two failed. I just saw another post 2 days ago now that there's heavy pressure being put on the insurance companies because now there's proof that aftermarket parts don't perform the same as an OE part. So how are they going to justify telling you that as a customer, well, I'm your insurance company, it's my obligation to make you whole again, to make that vehicle as close to pre-accident condition. How do you justify that aftermarket part is going to work the same unless it's been tested? And that's what it comes down to for me. The way I see things is, I know we're all professionals. Some of us have been in this a long time, but none of us are engineers. Maybe one or two of you are. But unless it's been crash tested and proved that it's okay to put a hole here, I'm not putting a hole there. I had seen the Oem Position Statements, which are basically what the manufacturers say is allowable, not allowable, how to do a proper repair. They put out these statements, sometimes they change and whatnot. I've never seen a position statement that says it's okay to put a hole in the car. I've seen several that say it's not. Paintless dent repair, no hole drill. I talked to Audi at SEMA, introduced to them, PDR Nation, I'm here to get some education. Paintless dent repair, that's great, no drilling. You're gonna have an airbag issue. Okay, and we went on to talk. Then I got introduced to the Mercedes rep. PDR Nation, I'm here for education. Wow, paintless dent repair, that's great, no drilling. You're gonna have an airbag issue. So, it's not an option in my book. The position statement's there, whether it's in writing or not, nobody's telling me I can, and unfortunately I've heard too many people say, until they tell me I can't, I will. And even though that I can show them that it says you can't, well then what about so-and-so? How come Z-Bart can do it? Doesn't matter, that's Z-Bart. That's their problem, not mine. So that's where I'm at with the drilling thing. I don't want it to become too much about that. Any other questions as far as, marketing yourself or how to advance?
I have a body shop, and how can the insurance, they want to use all these aftermarket parts? And you say they're not attached, crash tested properly?
Well, that's what the lawyer that did the lawsuit in Texas for the Honda Fit that didn't collapse correctly because they glued the roof as opposed to welded it. He's doing that. He's doing it out of his pocket and researching, and he's basically taking the insurance industry to task for what happened. Part of the
What did he say?
he said something about having a body shop and asking how they could put aftermarket parts on a car.
You can refuse. You don't have to put aftermarket parts. That's a business decision of your own.
No, they force us to.
No, they don't. Do they take a gun and hold it to your head?
No.
Okay, they don't force you.
Well,
It's, you can sit there and fight it, and just refuse to do it. I just did one, and I don't know if he's in here or
are you guys
not.
in direct repair?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your contract is the problem that's holding you back from being able to refuse that. I would rethink it personally, but that's your business and business decisions and stuff. But I think that this Todd Tracy lawsuit is going to change the way that they're allowed to force you into doing anything, because the one thing that was originally brought up with that lawsuit was that, well, we only glued the roof because that's all State Farm would pay us to do. And guess what that turned into? Just because you didn't get paid to do it right doesn't mean you can do it any other way but right.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, just like the aftermarket parts, and if they pay you and say this is all you can use, like in your case here, something happens, liabilities will come back.
Yeah, as a DRP center, if you know your contract at all, you've waived double indemnity. Basically, if something happens because of the repair, whether they told you to do it that way or not, they are not on the hook iota. They basically put all that back on you. If they
You're
tell
the
you
repair professional.
Does the and Moss come in anywhere in protection?
that's above and beyond my expertise and knowledge or anything. I'm just saying what I've read throughout the time is basically, I've heard that the DRP contracts basically put you on the hook for everything. So you've signed a contract that says, I'm going to repair it at your price, but nowhere in the contract does it say that they're going to guarantee you work. They'll tell you that, and you'll probably see it boost to work, but they don't have it in writing anywhere, is that they're obligated to give you that work. And the same thing with the repairs that you're doing. They're going to tell you, well, look, this is what you have to do for your contract. And if you're not comfortable as a business putting the proper repair together, and you do it according to their specs, then the liability's all on you.
What state are you in?
Indiana.
In California, they have a thing with our BAR that talks about that. It's about properly repairing the car.
I would, honestly, for a body shop business, I would get involved with the SCRS, Society of Collision Repair Specialists. They're a very good nonprofit organization. They do all the education for SEMA. They've got a ton of videos and educational material as well. And they're great guys that I've talked to over there. And I'm sure you can find answers, and help along that way. But look up Todd Tracy. He's basically the lawyer that's doing a lot of this stuff, and he's trying to turn it on its head.
You mentioned Z-Bar, and I was going to ask before you.
Everybody does.
And I don't expect you to know everything that's
the only legalities I know about it is the second they drill a hole in the car, they void the manufacturer's corrosion protection. Okay, so basically somebody's paying a company to void the corrosion protection warranty so they can spray in corrosion protection. I don't understand how they're even in business at this point. But that's, you know, again, just because this guy does it doesn't mean it's right, and doesn't mean that I should do it either.
It was just such a great example of safety liability.
Oh, yeah.
And holes in cars
Yeah.
being put
Z-
together.
Z-Bart was-
It's been
yeah.
done millions of times.
Z-Bart was a lot bigger back in the day. Again, the corrosion protection, the E-coats and stuff that you're putting on the cars now is gonna be way better than whatever they're spraying in there.
Well, it's the airbags and the sensors. They-
Well, that's the other thing,
For 10
is
years.
I would imagine at some point they're
You're
gonna,
not gonna cut a 10-year-old car, or
Yeah.
20-year-old car, drill a hole, it's not gonna change the weight.
they're gonna run into some legal action, I would imagine. I can't understand how they wouldn't, but,
Liability.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't see myself drilling holes in a car like that at this point. Anybody else?
You said you went brick and mortar recently at some point.
Brick and mortar, yeah.
Transitioning from
Mhm.
business on. I think here's some of your transitional challenges.
The brick and mortar, I started out renting a small shop that I was using because I was starting to do bigger, more complicated repairs. Being in Northeast, there's just times of year I don't want to be out in the driveway for multiple hours at a time. Wintertime or summertime when it's too hot, I wanted to have some shade. I didn't want a customer looking over my shoulder or checking in and out and stuff like that. So I was renting a shop for a small time and happened to run into a location that I had seen for a long time. It was a new commercial park that just sat there and nobody was buying, and I was driving by one day and I saw the doors were open on 2 of the units, and I went in, they were for sale. I actually got the last unit. It's a very difficult transition. I do a little bit of everything, body shop, I do my dealership, so the way I have myself set up is I have one day a week where I'm absolutely at the shop, 8 to 5, whether I'm working or not, I'm there. Customers are learning over a course of time that that's a good day to bring it by. My body shop that I have right around the corner that sends me people, tells them bring it there on Wednesday. I can schedule customers at any other time that works for me, but 2 days of the week I'm in the county up north, and 2 other days I'm doing my dealer and some body shops in the area. So I'm getting older. I like having a place to sit down and have all my tools organized. If I've got a complex job that I don't want to be rooting through the back of my truck, I want to have all my stuff set up. So it's transitioned well. What I have noticed, again, back to Facebook, I know not everybody's a Facebook guy, but there's a group on Facebook for PDR retail shops, and it is growing faster and faster. There's a lot of guys that are starting to get into that point because people understand, they've heard about paintless dent repair now, you know? It's not where it was 10 years ago where people didn't know. There's some that still don't, but there are more and more that know. So having a fixed location establishes you. My biggest fear was, I'm gonna buy this shop, get myself all set, and my customers are so used to me coming to them that they're not gonna, and I found it almost the opposite. Customers have no problem if I tell them I can have you in and out of here in a half an hour. And I have a nice little waiting room, some coffee, and I usually put donuts out that day. They sit there with their phone, and they're, oh, you're done already? You know, and that's great. And then the customers that are dropping it off for a bigger dent feel a lot more comfortable dropping the car off, knowing that the car is being done in a fixed location. If I have a problem with it, that's where I'm gonna find him. Not, well, the guy, he used to drive around here in a van, I haven't seen him in a while. You know, they don't wanna have that experience. It's, the more it's becoming known, the easier it is, you know. It's like a detail guy that runs around and washes cars, and then another one that has a shop. Once you've got yourself established in a location, you know, you can grow it however.
And then yourself to a point that you have an ideal understanding of how many square feet you can.
It wasn't more, for me, the shop I had originally didn't have a waiting room. That's what I wanted in this, was a waiting room. Because I had a lot of customers that would stop by for a quick job, and this is how I did my repair with them. They asked me something. And I don't normally mind that, but sometimes it's just annoying, depending on the customer. Sometimes it's like, you almost feel rushed, or sometimes you went a little bit too quick, you know, and you're like, oh man, that popped out. You didn't want the customer to see that. They go, boy, that's all I had to do. Because the next time you get a call from them, they're going to send it to you. It's got cracks in the paint from where they tried to pop the dent out. So, it's nice. Like I said, I enjoy it. There's days. The hardest thing for me about having a shop is, like I said, that Wednesday, I tell them I'm there from 8 to 5, is the day where I have nothing really scheduled. And I'm sitting in the shop, and I love the golf. And it's 80 degrees or 75 degrees out, and I'm going, man, my buddies are going, and I'm stuck here. But I've told my customers I'll be here from 8 to 5, and I'll sit there. That's the hardest part for me, is going from being mobile and knowing, hey, look, I got nothing else to do. Off to the golf course I go, or go, home to see the wife and kids, or whatever. One of the reasons why I don't want a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. I don't want a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 shop. But that's me personally. You find what fits for you.
Did you notice an increase in estimates in like ones that you guys closed having a shop, or it's
Oh, yeah.
the same as?
Oh yeah, no, I can definitely get, part of it's because I'm more comfortable telling a customer it's gonna be this much more, knowing that, man, that's a half hour dent. Drop it off for an hour or two. They don't know how long, when I pull up to the house and I'm in the driveway, I can only fidget around, getting tools out, and still I drug my button, and it only took 15 minutes, and I gotta go in there and tell them I charge them this, and the first thing people do when they think about it is, you make this much an hour? They always equate it to an hourly rate. So that's the hardest part, and that's why I find the shops easier. And even if I do a quick one in the shop and they're in the waiting room, I'll sit down in the back and I'll do something else and fidget around, and they don't realize that it was done in 5 minutes. I'll make them wait 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and stuff like that. Sorry.
Do you find that you need to offer your customers rental cars for a larger job?
I don't. For the most part, most of my jobs, I tell them 4 or 5 hours I'll need the car. They'll get somebody to drop it off. I have heard and thought about on more than one occasion having that one customer that's having a hard time finding somebody to pick them up if they drop it off. And one of the solutions I had heard online was Uber. Uber's a great choice. If you can set up an Uber account, have the Uber guy come pick them up and take them home, and then pick it back. It's going to cost you a couple bucks, but
It releases your liabilities. All right, this is all about liabilities. All this conversation is all about liabilities. How much insurance I should have, what I should be doing, to make sure that this doesn't fall back on you. So.
Just looking at a worst case scenario, so if we did not get the scan tool, what are some common everyday, maybe just 1 or 2 examples of this could really bite you in the butt if you don't have it?
Again, I haven't been doing it long enough to get a whole lot of things. Like I said, I had the Suburban I did a couple weeks ago. I dropped the bumper. I didn't take it off. I didn't unplug it. I just dropped it out of the way and went up through a vent and unplugged the tail. And had 2 codes for anti-lock brakes and 1 for driver assist. Put everything back together. It could just mean that it stopped communicating with that particular module, and plug it back in and everything's fine. Those codes are still in the car. If I don't clear them, they're still in the car. Worst case scenario would be the scenario that Todd Tracy's working on with the airbag that didn't deploy because somebody dropped the headliner, unplugged an airbag, and didn't plug it back in when they put the headliner up, and somebody died. That's a worst case scenario. Again, just because that car I did had some codes on it doesn't mean that the driver assist module is not working now that it's plugged back in. But how do I know it got plugged back in? I have to clear the codes and make sure that everything's communicating again. If it's not communicating, I have to go, oh, I must have missed something, and go from there. Have I run into any situations where I went, oh man, I broke something, or it's not working right, I can't clear the code? I haven't had that situation yet. And I don't think, for general, the most part, that you're gonna run into that, unless Mike Wall was there talking earlier about a car that he did, a Chevy Caprice or something, where he didn't realize there was a backup battery in the back quarter panel, and he pulled a taillight. If he had just shoved the tool in there without pulling the liner back, he could have connected right to the positive terminal and shorted something out. Things like that could happen. I don't know. It's I'm in the protect myself, phase at this point.
Did you try to disconnect the battery?
On,
Sometimes you can reset it.
that is not an option.
Not an option.
Not It's not gonna clear codes, it's not gonna clear codes, and just on that one.
Sometimes I say,
No,
turn the key
just,
every time.
just on that one note right there, here's a statement from GM on a vehicle with OnStar. Do never disconnect the battery with the key in any other position besides off. And when you say that, I'm talking about also if it has a key fob, those key fobs, what happens, you got that in your pocket, you're walking up to the car, and it, at a certain point, picks up that you have that fob in your pocket, maybe the door will unlock for you, or it'll start powering up some modules and stuff, so they're voltage through. If you disconnect the battery on that GM car, while that's in the on position, or maybe you have the key fob in your pocket, OnStar thinks maybe there was an accident, it's lost power, so it goes to an auxiliary backup battery. That backup battery is there so that you can call OnStar if you were in an accident and something happened. That backup battery does not recharge. So it will continually run until it runs down and it's dead. At that point, the battery needs to be replaced. So that's why I'm saying when you start tinkering around with these electrical systems, taking batteries off and do your research first before you disconnect the battery. Make sure you're not putting yourself into a situation where you thought you were going to fix something real quick and now you've got a snowball situation. And you're out a lot of money because you didn't know what you were doing.
So a lot of these, when you get these cars with all the sensors, you gotta be calibrated and all that, they're pretty much gonna have two batteries. So
No.
if your battery goes dead, then all of a sudden all your sensors go out and then you.
The battery, on this particular statement here, this is a backup battery.
Right.
It's to allow the OnStar to work correctly.
I'm just thinking of the battery, the main battery goes just dead.
I know Mercedes has a backup battery as well. I'm not sure exactly what systems it controls or what it does, but when you're playing with the computer systems and the power systems on a car, you're getting into a Pandora's box if you're not doing it the right way. So you get a scan tool, scan it, clear the codes, and you know, document everything along the way. If you get into going, oh, YouTube says I can do this. Yeah, YouTube's not legal advice either.
The reason why the codes don't disappear like they used to by disconnecting the battery or shorting the battery terminals together has to do with the type of memory that is being stored on older computers. They use the constant power to store items in memory. Nowadays, we all have flash drives that don't require power. That's a similar kind of memory that they're using, and so it doesn't require power to store those codes.
Gotcha.
So you can disconnect everything.
So it's basically like on a
It's still there.
yeah, flash drive. Gotcha. Any other questions? Well, like I said, all my other classes, our quest for knowledge is like a puzzle. If you've got a piece of the puzzle, please bring it to us. With that, thank you for attending.